Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Morning Glory video. In today's episode, we are going to be doing another quick tip tactica. This time, exploring a concept that is as old as the Guard itself. No matter how many editions I have played through, I have always come across Guard players that want to make Combat Guard work. Well, what if I told you that in 10th edition, Combat Guard was not only possible, it was downright viable? And what if I told you you didn't need to buy expensive kits like Ogryns and Bullgryns and Rough Riders? What if you could take your existing infantry collection and turn it into a close combat powerhouse? All you need is an infantryman and his rifle, and a shed load of support characters. So if you like the sound of being able to pull off not only a thematic, but a genuinely effective bayonet charge, then this is the video for you. You know what, boys? Without further ado, let's fix bayonets, equip bayonets, be ready for blood, and dive right into today's episode. So the first thing that we need to have a look at, that we need to build our list upon, is a solid foundation of infantry. And there are two datasheets available to us as Guard players that make effective combat infantry. We've got the Catachan Jungle Fighters and the Death Korps of Krieg. Now, Catachans are often derided by the Guard community, looked down upon, because they don't have any special weapon or close combat or heavy weapon options. You really just get blokes with rifles, and then you can stack 4 flamers into a squad. Now, those 4 flamers are definitely not something to be underestimated. It's a lot of firepower you can bring to the table, but it doesn't stack up all that well against things like the Krieg, who are turning up with plasmas and melters, and they can still bring a crap load of flames as well, right? What Catachans do is they're actually good at close combat. They get +1 to their strength and +1 to their AP if they are charged or if they charge. What's really important to know about the Jungle Fighters is that that ability translates onto other units that join the squad. So it's not only the Jungle Fighters, which are suddenly strength 4, which makes a big difference. Strength 4 means that you are able to wound most enemy infantry on either 4s or 3s, and even up to anything that is toughness 7, you're wounding it on 5s. Obviously, that's not going to help you much against some of the heavy armor that you're going to come across, but light vehicles and below, your Guard can handle in combat, thanks to the Catachan's X strength, and the AP is certainly welcome. In an edition where AP has really been restricted, anything that lets you get that back into your list is fantastic. So the +1 strength and the +1 AP is a really, really big point in the favour of the Catachans, and the fact that they spread that love around to characters that join them is another Brucey bonus. On the other hand, we have the Death Korps of Krieg, and they have a couple of neat combat tricks as well. So their sergeants get power swords, and you can take 2 of them in a 20-man blob, and their Grim Demeanor ability means that if they've lost 1 bloke in the unit, and this can be a 20-man squad, then the whole squad gets +1 to hit. Combine that with fixed bayonets, and yes, you can combine fixed bayonets and +1 to hit. They do stack. I've covered this before on the channel. It means that your Kriegers can get up to 2+ to hit in combat, which is very nice. You also, when you're below half strength, get +1 to wound, which is really tasty. Means you can wound even toughness 14 things on 5s, but bear in mind you're going to be below half strength, so you will have lost a lot of your combat punch, but at least you're getting +1 to wound. On their own, these combat blobs aren't all that much to write home about, because it's just a bunch of guardsmen trying to wail on some pretty horrible units out there. But the way we take them to the next level is we start throwing in support characters. Straight away, we're going to look at the most obvious one, and that is Colonel Ironhand Strachan. He's a special character for the Catachans, and he can only join Catachan units. So if you want to do a combat guard army, you almost need to accept the fact that one of your infantry blobs is going to be Catachans. All right. Now, Strachan brings a lot to the table. He's got an auto shotgun, he's got a plasma pistol, but obviously today we're looking at his melee weapons, which is the Bionic Arm with Devil's Claw. Now, to start off, this is Anti-Monster 4+, which is hilarious and strangely relevant because we are in an edition with Tyranids in the starter box set. You're going to come across more than one Screamer killer in your time. So having Anti-Monster there is, if situational, at least a situation that's not that uncommon. But getting on to the main meat of the profile. It's a melee weapon, of course. It's got 6 attacks, weapon skill 2+, strength 6, AP -2, and 2 damage. But don't forget that when Strachan is in a unit of Catachans, that he goes up to strength 7 because of their jungle fight ability and AP -3 as well. On his own, Strachan would probably provide enough extra punch to make the Catachans viable, but he brings even more to the table because he's a force multiplier. And you guys know that when I hear the 2 words force and multiplier, I become a one-man A-frame. Cold Steel and Courage is his first ability. While this model is leading a unit, melee weapons equipped by models in that unit have the lethal hits ability. This means if you get a 6 to hit, it also wounds. Suddenly, you're able to actually go into enemy units that are T8 and higher and actually still do damage, because any 6s you get to hit just auto wound straight through. And don't forget, those auto wounds will benefit from the Catachan's extra AP as well. So these two combine very nicely together because Strachan is giving lethal hits, the Catachans are giving extra strength and extra AP. It's all just gelling very nicely into a lot of layered combat buffs. But we're not done yet because Strachan also power boosts himself. Been there, seen it, killed it. Each time this model makes a melee attack, if you made a charge move this turn, you can reroll the hit roll and you can reroll the wound roll. Now, straight up, this, bear in mind, let's be clear here, this only affects Strachan. If he gave 4 rerolls to hit and to wound to the blob he was with, he'd be S tier. Sadly, he's merely just very, very good. So he gets the 4 rerolls to hit. This means he has more opportunities to get 6s. This means that he gets more opportunities to get lethal hits, which go straight through and wound things. And bear in mind, he's AP3 at 2 damage. That's genuinely anti-tank, anti-monster. And don't forget, when you get to the wound roll, if you do come across a monster, it's a 4+ to wound with 4 rerolls. Again, so he's really good at tearing down monsters. But even against vehicles, don't forget, he's rocking strength 7 now. So unless you're fighting a Stomper, anything up to and including a Baneblade, he wounds on 5s with full rerolls. As we've seen with autocannons, if you can get a weapon that wounds on 5s and gives it full rerolls, it actually becomes anti-tank. And so I would argue that Strachan more than provides the anti-tank punch that you need between his lethal hits and being there, seen it, killed it. But wait, there's more, because Imperial Guard battle line units can have 2 leaders attached to them. So we're going to throw in a Regimental Preacher. This guy is designed to buff you in combat, and he does an alright job of doing that as well. Not only does he bring a power weapon to the table, which is 3 more strength 4, AP -2 damage 1 attacks, he gives himself full rerolls to hit. Again, I wish that spread to the rest of the squad, but I'll still take it on the Preacher. Remember that when the Preacher is part of the unit, if that unit receives the Fixed Bayonets order, then he will also get +1 to hit. So whilst he natively hits on a 4+, he's going to be part of a squad that's going to get Fixed Bayonets, so actually he's going to hit on a 3+. Now, side note here, I know we're kind of talking about Catachans right now, but again, don't forget that your Preacher will benefit from the squad ability of the unit he's joined. So with your Death Corps of Krieg, if they've lost a Kriegsman and they've received Fixed Bayonets, the Preacher will also hit on 2s and still have his 4 rerolls to hit. But regardless of which unit you add the Preacher to, his War Hymns ability gives the whole mob sustained hits 1. That includes Strachan. So every time Strachan gets a hit, he gets a sustained hit and he gets a lethal hit. Every single time one of those Catachans gets a hit, they get a sustained hit, and they get a lethal hit. So now let's put all of this together. We're going to end up with a unit of 22 models. There will be 20 attacks at strength 4, AP -1, 1 damage, hitting on 3s. Statistically, they're going to generate 3 lethal hits and 3 sustained hits. We've also got 6 attacks coming in at hitting on 2s, strength 7, AP -3, 2 damage, and again with 4 rerolls and lethal hits and sustained hits. So we should generate at least 1 of each of those as well. And on top of all of this, we've got another 3 attacks hitting on 3s with 4 rerolls, strength 5 thanks to the Catachans, AP -2, 1 damage. I know I often say in these video series, well, that couldn't go toe-to-toe with some Khorne Berserkers. I am not saying that this time. If you got that charge off on a squad of 5 Berserkers, I wouldn't be surprised if you swept them aside. I mean, I'm sure Khorne's got some way of fighting on death, but that doesn't really matter. As long as they die, that's the important bit. Your guys come back. Their guys, apart from Angron, don't. Being serious for a moment, I think that is a genuine combat threat. I think that will allow you to utterly dominate light infantry close combats, especially if you get the charge off, and more than happily punch up into the world of MEQ, Marine Equivalent. The only place I think it gets dicey, pretty bloody dicey if I'm going to be honest, is Custodes. But they are the #1 combat army right now. Even World Eaters, who are the definition of a melee force, struggle into them. So missing out to them isn't so much of a problem. It just means that if you were to face off against Custodes, you could not send this into a 10-man brick, you'd get deleted. But if there were maybe 2 or 3 that were left over from an artillery barrage or some sort of tank fusillade, you could probably, if they were a bit injured, go in there, and with Strachan doing the heavy lifting, you could probably finish them off. Now, that might not sound like a huge ringing endorsement, but just take a step back and think about that for a moment. There are very few units in the Guard which can also make such a claim. But another thing you might be thinking right now is, Morty and Glory, you promised me a combat army. So far, I've seen 1 blob. How do we get more of these combat squads? Because you can't clone Strachan and start adding him into more Catachan blobs, and Kriegers haven't got a character that can help them out, do they? Well, dear viewers, Kriegers actually do. In fact, there is a character which I believe is a hidden gem, something which is the surprising key to making multiple combat blobs. It's not the Commissar, it's not the Ogryn Bodyguard. It is the Regimental Engine Seer. I know that right now many an eyebrow is being raised at me inquisitively, but also very skeptically, but hear me out. On his own, the Regimental Engine Seer has a half decent combat profile. Between his Engine Seer axe and his servo arm, he's got 4 strength 6 AP -2 2 damage attacks. That is the same strength, AP and damage as Strachan. Bear in mind that when he's part of the squad, he will get +1 to hit, so he's hitting on 3s. And bear in mind that when he's part of a Catachan blob, he'll also get that extra strength and AP. And if he's part of a Krieg blob, then he gets the +1 to hit and the +1 to wound. Makes him really, really good. Now, I understand that 4 pseudo Strachan attacks is not the same as bringing Strachan, but wait, I've got some more for you. The Engine Seer has the Vengeance for the Omnissiah ability. If a friendly Ash Minotaur vehicle model is destroyed within 12 inches of this model until the end of the battle, this model's Engine Seer axe has an attacks characteristic of 6. This actually puts him on more attacks than Strachan, because he would have 7 with his servo arm. And that can be any vehicle. You could take a Scout Sentinel. You can take a squadron of Scout Sentinels, and as long as one of those Scout Sentinels dies near the Engine Seer, he goes berserk. What's great about using Sentinels for this is you don't mind them being on the front lines because they're probably daring reconning the enemy anyway, and when they die, they just come back thanks to the reinforcement stratagem. But wait, there's even more! Because not only can you get your regimental engineer up to 7 attacks very easily, you can actually get him 4 more, even more powerful attacks. And that is via Munitorum Servitors. You see, when an engineer joins a unit, in addition to any other leaders, if you have Munitorum Servitors in your army, 1 squad of those can join the same squad as the engineer. What this means is, in total, you could have a Krieg blob or a Catachan blob with an engineer, 20 Catachans, a preacher, and 4 Munitorum Servitors. Each one of those servitors is bringing 1 strength 6, AP -2, damage 3, not damage 2, damage 3. It's actually better than Strachan. It's better than the other server arm. It's better than the Enginseer Axe. And whilst they do begin with a weapon skill 5+, whilst they're in the same squad as an Enginseer, they get +1 to hit, so they're up to 4+. And if they receive the fixed bayonets order, guess what? Now they're hitting on 3s. So in total, if you take an Enginseer and the servitors, add them onto a Catachan blob with a preacher, you are looking at a squad which again has 20 strength 4, AP -1 attacks, and you've got the preacher's power weapon in there, which is another 3 strength 5, AP -3 attacks with 4 rolls to hit, and then you would have 11 strength 7, AP -3, damage 2 and damage 3 attacks hitting on 3s. But what I really love about all of this is, unlike Strachan, who's locked into a Catachan blob, the Enginseer can go with Kriegers no issue. No problem whatsoever. It works almost the same. You're going to end up with 20 guys, but now you're going to have actually more power weapons because you've got the 2 sergeants as well. You've got all of those attacks at this time without the Catachans. There'll be strength 6, AP -2, but still damage 2, still damage 3. And we've talked a lot about on this channel how there's not that much difference between AP2 and AP3 in some circumstances, because often what happens is you bump into like a 4+ invulnerable save or 5+ invulnerable save before it really matters. So you're going to have loads of power attacks, and the Enginseer will actually be able to end up hitting on 2s, and the preacher will hit on 2s because of the Kriegers giving you the +1 to hit from Grim Demeanor and that stacking with fixed bayonets. So it's a different kind of combat blob when you do it with the Kriegers. You're getting more accurate hits, but they're not quite as strong and not quite as AP, but you're also getting some extra power sword attacks in there as well. So now that we've got a couple of templates for our combat blobs, the big question is, how many do we want in a combat army? And for me, the sweet spot is at 4. 4 big combat blobs. Gives you mass, it gives you plenty of punch. You can recycle a lot of those with reinforcements. Little side note here, don't forget that if you have attached servitors to a 20-man blob, when you use reinforcements, the servitors come back with that blob because technically they're part of it and their starting strength has been increased. It's a little bit of a quirk. If you want to know more about it, check out my Munitorum Servitor review video. But just trust me, servitors come back with reinforcements, characters don't. Anyway, back to the main topic. You want 4 of them because you get numbers and you get combat potential, and importantly, it leaves you enough points left over to be able to do fire support. Now, fire support is really important in a combat guard army because at the end of the day, we're still just guardsmen. And we need our enemies to be nicely softened up. If we go in there and they're full strength and we're full strength, maybe we'll win, maybe we won't. That's a fair fight. And I'm sorry, but when we're fighting Xenos Abominations and superhuman genetic engineered warriors, I think we can get away with fighting a little dirty, making it an uneven fight. So we want to use our artillery, we want to have plenty of points left over for tanks and sentinels and stuff so that we can soften them up and finish them off with a good old bayonet charge. But some of you might have noticed that if we're taking 4 blobs of guard and then spending the rest on artillery and tanks and stuff, just like we would normally, we're going to encounter a bit of a problem because we're going to run out of preachers because we can only take 3 of them. So we're going to have a Catachan blob with Strachan and a preacher. We're going to have a blob of either Krieg or Catachans with a Regimental Engineer, Servitors, and a preacher, and then another one of those. But what do we put in this 4th blob? Well, we're going to put another Servitor squad and another Engineer in there. But the last thing we want to put in there is a Platoon Command Squad. Now, this Platoon Command Squad is going to be really important, and you'll see why in a moment. But the reason we're taking one of these over, say, like a Commissar or a Death Corps Marshal is because they actually bring quite a lot of close combat attacks to the table. What a lot of people don't understand is that Platoon Command Squads, the guardsmen in them, can be equipped with chainswords. Yep, that's right. If you look on the back of your data card, it does say that any number of veteran guardsmen can have their lasgun replaced with one of the following. And it says 1 chainsword. The little asterisk that says excluding the chainsword, you can't select the same weapon for this more than once, but it does say excluding the chainsword. So you can give all 4 of your veteran guardsmen chainswords, which means they actually get 3 attacks each. So 4 guardsmen are bringing 12 extra attacks to the table. And don't forget, if they're part of a Catachan blob, they're all strength 4, they're all AP -1. It's actually a really nice damage boost. And if they're Kriegers, they're all hitting really well thanks to Grim Demeanor and potentially wounding very well too. The officer can also take a Power Fist, which is another weapon that's going to be adding in even more strength 6, AP -2, damage 2. I mean, think of all the strength 6, AP damage 2 things we've managed to stack in these various blobs. And don't forget, in this blob, we're also taking another Engineer and another Munitorm Servitor because we haven't run out of those. We had 1 more of those that we could take in before we hit the rule of 3. So this squad is going to end up with, if the Engineer goes berserk, 14 potentially strength 7, AP -3, damage 2 attacks. That's pretty good. So not only are we getting even more attacks in here at good strength and volume and AP, but we're also getting an extra officer. And this really is the hot tamale. Because if you think about it, we keep talking about fixed bayonets, but Strachan, he can order 2 blobs around. But if that 3rd blob we take's got an Engineer and a preacher in there, there's no orders available for it. So what we do is we take a Platoon Command Squad, we give 1 guy Master Voxer a chainsword. Yep, you can do that. And you also give 1 guy Medipack and a chainsword, and Regimental Standard and a chainsword. And that last guy can, whatever you want really, chainsword, there you go. And then the Platoon Commander is going to have a Power Fist. What this allows us to do is then also spend 15 points on Grand Strategist on the officer, which gives us an extra order. So that means Strachan could order 2 blobs around, and the Platoon Command Squad can order 2 blobs around. So now all 4 of our combat blobs have easy access to fixed bayonets. And the good thing is the Platoon Command Squad one, whilst it hasn't got sustained hits or anything, it's getting a crap load of just basic attacks in there and Power Fist attacks. And they also get the Feel No Pain and the extra OC and other bits and bobs there. So overall, we're ending up with a crap load of attacks. If you really want to take it an extra step further, although I think this final blob is going to get quite pricey if you start doing this, you could add in an Ogryn Bodyguard as well. That is going to be up to you whether you think you can spring for even more combat potential. But bear in mind, the other combat blobs are running 130 points plus 35 plus 80, and this one would be running 130 points plus 60 plus 80, and then the Ogryn Bodyguard would be another 40. So I think if you get to the end of your list and you've got 40 points left over for the Ogryn Bodyguard, chuck him in, but I don't think you need it for the blob. As you've seen, we're already getting a crap load of high strength, high AP, high damage attacks. So if we put all of this together, we take the 4 blobs, we deck them out with these characters, it's going to come in at 1,020 points. Now that might seem pricey, but bear in mind, you are going to end up with 104 models. That's a lot of guardsmen, a lot of servitors, a lot of ensigns, all the support characters actually gets you a really solid amount of infantry. And you still have about 1,000 points left over to spend on all of your artillery. You've got the Lord Solar. We've not taken him into account. Maybe he could replace one of the command squads. It's up to you. But my point is you've got more than enough points left over to invest in all of that juicy fire support that we spoke about before. And I think that will deliver a really well-rounded list that will be able to not only do the shooting, which Guard loves to do, but also crack the Enigma code. Finally, do something that Guard has been struggling to do for so many editions. Actually be viable in combat. Of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Do you think this is viable, or is it just a little bit too expensive? Of course, if you've enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier patrons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a massive thank you to Bonbonvert, Ken Starr, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Varney. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. You are incredible. Your generosity is truly humbling, and I could just say it 1,000 times over and over again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hope you all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.